Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, so good morning, good evening to everyone. So my name is, and thank you, Gertrude, for inviting me to participate in this podcast. I'm very grateful. So my name is Lilliana Domingues Teixeira in this case. I'm naturally from Portugal, but due to professional circumstances, I right now move around between Portugal and Ireland because the company that I'm running is based right now in Dublin. So that's majorly that. So I'm 46 years old, and presently I am, in this case, in the beautiful Lisbon. So talking about my journey, so I started as an environmental engineer because since I was a kid, I was always passionate about nature and the environment. And I always wanted to do something about it when I was a kid back then, many years ago already. And at the time, I didn't felt that we were giving enough attention to it. It was not like things are right now. And so I pursue my degrees, my graduation on the environmental engineering side. Then I completed it. I started working as an environmental engineer in the construction field and in companies related to construction, where I grow a lot and I learn a lot. But that was kind of the beginning of, at least in Portugal, the issues regarding environmental things on corporations, mainly on construction companies. And I did all my work on that as project manager, as an environmental manager. Then after some years, I decided that I wanted to increase a little bit more knowledge and my expertise. So I did a master in renewable energy and a graduation in renewable energy. So I worked in the field for many years, and that became kind of my main core expertise back then. And so I work a lot on a big company here in Portugal related to renewable energy and renewable energy projects. Then kind of I was feeling not fulfilled enough when I was doing it, because I was working for a company and I always wanted to develop my own thing. So I started to embark kind of in a journey on self-develop, self-query, self-awareness on what was my place in the world, my purpose, and all of that. And that led me to engage in several projects and trying to start it one of my own. I had an idea, but at the time, the idea progressed to another idea. So I started working on some consultancy works back then, more related to sustainability, and then I I I learn and engage with the concepts of conscious business and conscious organizations. And that's when really things started to um, making sense of my mind. And that's kind of the things that I wanted to really pursue because at the time I was much environmental focus on the technical issues, but I thought that kind was disconnected with the rest of the side of people, the development of people, and the conscious business issue and the topics of it, which covers a lot of the part of the purpose, the leadership, kind of brings all that together. And for me, it started to make sense. So that's why this company that I started and I'm a founder, it's mostly right now focused on consultancy on the area. Of course, we cover sustainability as main basis, but what we really want to lead companies to become is to be conscious and regenerative organizations, as we call it. So this has been my work for the last years, the short last years, where we are approaching all this concept. Of course, we still cover these topics of sustainability, which is now all the requirements that there is in the market, mostly in the European Union market. But more and more, I believe that organizations should transition and see these issues not as a add-on, but as the core issue of their organizations, and to move from having being a company where they meet the environmental issues, but more than that, how we can really integrate principles and values and action in the world that leaves a positive impact by being more ethical, more engaged on all stakeholders, and leave a legacy around the world. That's kind of the real thing right now that we are focused on. So basically, right now we are focused on developing all this offer and grow our business and our offer on those terms. So this has kind of been my journey in this case.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey up until this point. So, my first question for you is, how do you define the legacy you aim to leave through inspiring business leaders towards sustainability, and what drives your passion for this mission?
So I would say that the legacy that I want to leave the most is mostly to organizations and people by themselves understand they are much more than just going along with the compliance issues and do it as adds on, but see this as the well-being of all stakeholders in this case, which include the planet, the society, the environment, all of this is pushes to the organizations being better organizations, even improve their profits, and themselves wanted to not just be a purely commercial making profit thing, but being organizations that transform all society and themselves leave a legacy in the world, a positive legacy in the world. So that's kind of the legacy that I would like to deliver, would be the organizations to become their own legacy in the world in a positive way.
I love it. Can you elaborate on the conscious and regenerative principles that you encourage businesses to embrace, and how these principles drive organizational change?
Well, the principles are much more than just, for example, while being, and it's not just a question of words now. People say, oh, that might be why there is sustainability, why conscious and regenerative instead. It's not just a question of words. It's much more beyond words right now. That's why our tagline is even beyond sustainability, because sustainability is focused on organizations doing less harm.
Yeah.
What we are saying here, instead of having this perspective, you should have the perspective of leaving a more positive impact in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
this shifts totally the way that organizations should organize themselves, should engage themselves internally and external to with other stakeholders. So it's totally shifting the perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And from that matter is also not, it comes from a more compassionate even place, because it's not accusing and making, oh, we are doing bad things, so let's do not so bad things. No, it's important for organizations to understand they are a big players on the organization as a whole. They can transform and lead change, and doing a positive impact is in the direction that their mindset should be. So the
Mm-hmm.
principles that are connected with this is basically having not such a narrow focus on certain topics. It's working like nature and an ecosystem works. You see everything connected with everything, what we call the whole system thinking, which is
Yeah.
very important, because when organizations see their role and the role of the other organization, and it's like an ecosystem working together, many
Yeah.
more possibilities of a positive outcome could come from that. and and normally organizations see themselves still in silos. See, I'm working on this, it's everything much more separate. And with this, one of the biggest principles are organizations and themselves understand that they are a positive asset in an ecosystem, but the
Yeah.
most important thing are the interconnection with the other organizations and the other parts of the ecosystem, as nature does.
Yes.
um, this is one of the biggest things. And another thing is, instead of, and many companies still, even though they strategize, it's really have a vision, of a long-term vision. It's not just focusing on the 1 year. Of course, the world is messy right now.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to organizations right now operate in such what we call a VUCA world, a very volatile, such
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty. It's very difficult to plan or strategize whatsoever. But regardless, having a vision of long term, knowing that resilience has to be one of the main cores of the organization,
Mm-hmm.
which is becoming to adapt to all this uncertainty that comes in the world right now, which is totally unpredictable. It's also one of the biggest principles that we try to engage on organizations, that to really create a long-term vision where, again, you create with that a positive legacy in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of, I would say, the main things that would come on that regard.
Okay. So, what are the most significant challenges that organizations face integrating sustainability into their strategies? And how do you help them overcome these challenges?
I think the biggest challenge of all right now, and of course, again, we can see the way that the world is right now very uncertain and very volatile. But I think it's a struggle between having so much regulations, and even the field, purely in the field of our environment. There's so many regulations, so many things to give compliance to. So this really struggles to see, okay, this is a more one thing that I should be focused on my organization, instead of just focus on the production of my products and service. I have to put all these
Effort.
in place on strategizing things. There's too much compliance, too much um, things to distract in a way the board of advisors, the administrators of the organization. Is too many things, too many pressure, right?
Mm, mm,
And also this pressure of society of almost a little bit of um, complain against. That's a lot of, with all this social media, with all, there's the eyes on it. So there's all this challenge that organizations face right now of
mm.
being more than themselves, right? So
Yes.
the way that we kind of operate organizations is also, I think, and don't get me wrong with this word, I think the first asset for organization to be in themselves, and this kind of a layer that we try to think is, first of all, be compassionate with with the organization itself and the
Yes.
role that it has, because sometimes it has so much pressure of a negative side that I think that first and foremost, this environment compassion, okay, we are doing the best we can at this stage, but we
Right.
can improve it. So it's how we help organizations is to really assess the main issues, and we work on a 360-degree assessment of the organization, where we look to the culture, the leadership issues, the things with the supply chains, everything, and understand what are the things that still require to improve, and how all the stakeholders of the organization look at the organization. And with
Right.
that assessment, we have a better perspective what the organization is, what are their challenges, the faults, and the perspective of the whole. So I think that's the main, and of course with those inputs, we develop a strategy that come along to address those gaps or challenges, whatever. So I
Mm.
think it's the better way that we can help organizations in this case is by doing that.
So, how do you advocate for regenerative practices within industries known for their environmental impact? And what successes have you seen?
Um, I seen so your first just related with the regenerative practice. More and more, we see organizations that are engaging of and understanding that is much more than just going along and do less harm. And
Yes.
we see those examples, organizations looking at how we really can transform and create positive impact. Of
Right.
course, there are still issues that could come with greenwashing and sometimes saying things that are, it's just political correct or whatever. But
Yes.
there are organizations that in their core, and mostly do because leaderships here are very important. So the leaders of organizations that are more conscious, and that's why one of the biggest points of working on of this is the conscious leadership, is working with the leaders to becoming more conscious. So the organizations that which leaders are more conscious and more present, they are really engaging and going from being sustainable and going to the next level, which is what we propose, which are conscious and regenerative. And we see a lot of examples right now, the organizations that are moving towards those issues.
Okay. So, what does conscious leadership mean to you? And how do you foster this type of leadership in your consultancy work?
So conscious leadership is it's even more than just being an ethical leadership. It's because right nowadays there's a lot of these terms of leadership around, but conscious leadership for us is the core. It's the issue which should be leadership, right? It's the term of leadership itself. It's not kind of a leadership.
Right.
So conscious leader is the leader that really understands and kind of connects with the self-awareness of itself, So it's
Right.
kind of has a spiritual perspective of life itself,
Mm,
understands there's a connection between the values of it and the values of the organization. So really pursue these matters. So as a part of consciousness in it, develops a sense of self-awareness. And from that, understanding their own challenge, their own values, and it passes also to the organization, right? It
okay.
kind of helps to transform the culture of the organization. It's
Right.
a it's a it's a leadership that also develops the sense of self-leadership in the whole organization, the understanding that each one of themselves is a leader in
Yes.
their own role.
Their own right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of the way that we try to bring to organizations this fundamental role of leaders becoming conscious leaders in this
Mm.
matter.
So, how important is collaboration amongst businesses and sustainability advocates in achieving broader environmental goals? And how do you share? Can you share an example of a successful collaboration?
I think personally, I think collaboration and partnerships is key in everything.
Mm,
Most and foremost in the world right now, where everything is interconnected.
yes.
So the you really see that the organizations are so dependent, so many stakeholders, that you'll see that one major thing on developing the organization is not only the part of conscious leadership, but the relationships that develop with all the stakeholders and all the collaboration with all the stakeholders, and even potentially their competitors, right? So I cannot, of course, say specific names of companies,
Mm-hmm.
but we've been seeing, and there's studies that demonstrate, and the surveys that demonstrate that the organizations that have a better engagement with all their stakeholders have
Mm-hmm.
more profit, are better considered by the community. So you really see the importance of
Yeah.
relationships and collaboration among all stakeholders.
So, given your experience across various industry sectors, how does the approach to sustainability differ, and what universal principles apply?
It's a hard question, but in a way, um, each each organization, it's not only about its own industry, because of course its own industry is regulated, has its own characteristics, there its own issues, right? Its own market. So it's each organization, depending on the sector. It's even there are sectors that are more challenging than others, of
Yeah.
course. So that kind of even sectors where there's kind of culture setting of organizations on that sector that are
Mm-hmm.
through years have developed a kind of sense of culture in that industry, in that sector, that distinguish from the other sector.
Right.
So it kind of defines the way that organizations have to be approached, because we really have to understand the culture of the sector itself and the
Yeah.
industry in. So that being said, I think you asked me what the challenges would be, right?
Yes.
The challenge of these, the challenge of the organizations, right?
Yes.
So the challenges of these organizations, it's very different according to the sectors, because they're even more issues. For example, just reporting to compliance. Some sectors that have to more obligations than others,
Mm-hmm.
sectors that are struggling more in the whole frame than others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mostly the sectors right now that have to reinvent themselves, the very industry sectors are different from more the technology sectors. Each one
Right.
of them has its own challenge, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you articulate all this, you have to really understand the core issue of that sector in that organization in that sector, because everything differs. It's not the same thing on all of them.
Right.
So the challenge could go from different type of regulation, from different type of industries that have a lot of big value chains and supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
It's another bigger challenge. They have a lot of challenge, and industry that more and more of the consumers are not having so much good image of them, you know.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
those sectors, you really have to balance out the importance that those sectors have still in the economy, and
Mm-hmm.
how to improve in a way that their image, their legacy balances out with the legacy that they have in the past, right? So
Mm-hmm.
balance those things for different sectors is different.
So, what future trends do you foresee in sustainable and regenerative business practices, and how should organizations prepare?
So I see that more and more, mostly, and even here more in Europe, the push that is being done due to compliance in the regulation, the compliance with regulation, is pushing a lot this sustainability agenda towards the organizations, right? But
Yeah.
the thing again, maybe I go to the beginning of our conversation. I think where organizations, and at least is the work that we wanted to do with the organizations, or that we are doing with the organization, is to moving from this perspective of being this is a add-on, this is so hard, this is one more thing that I have to do,
Mm-hmm.
instead of and shifting. And I hope that this is the shift that comes along, also for not being so pressured with all these regulations, and also balance between the institutional side, which is pressuring a lot organizations, but
Mm-hmm.
also to help organizations from themselves
Yes.
having the awareness that it's just much more than compliance.
Mhm.
It's about the well-being of all the stakeholders in general. It's about this thing of making something positive in the
Yeah.
world, in beyond the issues of compliance. So I
Okay.
think the shift, there's a push on compliance, but the
Mhm.
shift that has to come is coming from this adds-on to make it core on the organization.
So, my final question is, what advice would you give to emerging business leaders who want to prioritize sustainability and ethical practices in their organizations?
I would say that the first thing would be to make a really conscious awareness on the own leader,
Mm-hmm.
on their values, on their purpose, listening to their internal team, the external team, all the stakeholders. What are
Yes.
their values? What are their purpose? In understand all of this. Why is important for them? What kind align kind of the personal values with the values of the organization. That's
Yeah.
very important. And from that strategy, create the vision and a strategy. This seems very simplified, but we realize that sometimes this is make in a very um, not profound way, right? It's very, and what we are saying is do this in a real engage and um, self-awareness space.
Right.
and don't just go along with is trendy, what is catchy, what is political correct. Not go along only with this, but
Yeah.
really embark in a self perspective of the organization itself.
Mm-hmm.
um, Make this evaluation inside, and
Right.
then you listen to all the implications, all the ones that the stakeholders that the organization implicates. I think that's the most important advice.
Okay. Absolutely wonderful.
Mm.
Well, I can see that your work is definitely going to have an impact. You are literally a living legacy because you are
Mhm.
seeing the changes as you go. So, thank you so much for your passion around making our planet a more better and sustainable place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you to all the audience, and thank you. And hopefully, we'll see or in Lisbon, Dublin, or in Australia. That would be wonderful.
One of these days, I will come to Europe. And thank you to
You're mostly welcome.
thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you stories and voices from people from all over the world with a passion to inspire, energize, connect you to these amazing people. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Liliana.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. All the best for
Bye,
all.
everybody. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay connected.